Welcome back for part 3. We're going to assemble the top end. I'm going to put the cylinder head, camshaft, cam chain, and then we'll wrap that up, and then we're going to move over and wrap up the stator side. And we can't wrap the clutch up yet. We're still waiting for parts.
Yeah, when we finished off in part 2, can you spin this around for us?
Yeah.
You temporarily had the clutch basket in there, but no plates or fibers.
Yes. So we're just waiting on that stuff. We're going to wrap everything else up. I'm not going to put the right-hand cover on tonight until we get that assembled, but we're going to head back. We're going to put the cylinder on, and we're going to move forward from there. There's dowels that go into the case, put the gasket. It's a coated metal. And these have provisions already. They have like a silicone or some form of sealer on the one side to seal up at the seam where the two case halves come together. Sometimes they don't do that, and so you want to put some case bond there.
Now I assume there's a stopping point. You can't push those down too far.
Yeah, there's a machined recess.
So they'll bottom out.
Yeah. Maxima break-in oil. Cylinder. And make sure that the rings are all compressed. Nothing is hanging out. It's one thing that gets really tricky with this is the really thin rings that are above and below the oil waffle ring. If you don't pay attention, if you don't pay attention, you can get them things bent. They're not into the channel.
You can get it twisted.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Don't get it twisted.
Bring the piston back up the top dead center.
There's always a nervous time for me doing engine rebuilds myself, is getting the cylinder back over the piston and not dinging anything up.
Yeah, the rings too. It's like it's really
compressing them properly. You made it look easy.
Yeah, sometimes it goes easier than others. The other thing too is the higher the compression. Like if you were to measure the top of the piston around the side versus down at the bottom of the piston on the skirt's going to be the largest part. But the higher the compression, the top of the piston is usually, I don't know what the measurement is, but it's considerably smaller. And so because this is higher compression and because it is smaller, it allows you to get the rings in to make it an easier installation. If this was like a stock compression piston, the top of the piston is going to be closer to what the skirt part of the piston is, and that'll give you a little difficulty. But what's tough too is that these things are so small, they make tools for like automotive use that you can,
ring
compress the wrist,
yeah.
But you can't use it on this stuff.
Show us your ring compressors.
Right here.
There you go. Look at those ring compressors.
All right, I'm going to grab the head gasket and the cylinder head and the 4 bolts. The procedure on this is pretty tricky. I'm going to bring the service manual next to me and we'll go through it and I'll talk it out. But it's not just your, put it in and torque the bolt to one spec. There's multiple different things that they want you to do. So we're going to go through that to get that right. The other thing is they don't show in the service manual to replace the cylinder head bolts, but they are a torque to yield bolt, meaning you're putting the bolt to a torque and then adding an additional angle to that, whether it's 90 degrees, 60 degrees. So,
I never understood why they do that. Why can't you just give us the solid torque number to reach that point?
Okay, like you put it to 20 foot-pounds,
if you were to do 20 foot-pounds and then a 90-degree turn, which is a quarter turn beyond that, would equate to what? 22, 23 foot-pounds. Why don't you just tell us that?
Well, it's more, it ends up being more than that, but I wish I had the correct answer there. I don't know. A lot of companies do that, but a lot of companies tell you to replace the bolts every time that you do that. Like Polaris snowmobiles, they want you to replace the bolt.
Well, one thing I want to mention too
is because they stretch.
Yeah. You'll notice in part 2, Mario had a very small tolerance to torque down. What was it, like 7 pounds or less?
One of them was 3.7.
3.7 pounds. And you'll notice he had a very small, is it snap-on?
Yeah, it's a quarter-inch torque wrench.
Little quarter-inch torque wrench. Those torque wrenches are invaluable for doing these engine builds. It's not a guessing game where, it was 1 UGA or 2 UGAs.
Yeah, you definitely, especially these.
Invest in
For a long time, I never invested in the quarter-inch torque wrench because you could pretty much do it all. But
that tool paid for itself.
Yeah, you definitely, if you're trying to do this
on your own, invest in a set of good torque wrenches.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing. All right.
So I noticed the first thing you put in was the chain guide.
Yeah, and then
this
goes in there's only one way that goes in. There we go.
I just want to show the torque or the chain guide.
Yeah, put the chain guide in first. Yep. All right, we're going to get ready to install the cylinder head.
That goes on before the chain?
Yeah, the chain I feed down at the end before I put the cams in it. Because, I mean, you could do that, but then you're trying to fight the chain. If you had this all assembled where the stator was assembled and the flywheel and all that, yeah, you would have to leave the chain in there, fish it out and so on. But, wait a second here. I need to install, I believe this has to go in before. This is the second chain guide where the tensioner pushes against.
So it's opposite side?
Yes. Yeah, that's why, I mean, there's just like a certain way that I do it. And I leave the stator side all open. That way I can fish the chain in after and makes things a bit easier.
I don't think we've talked about it too much, but do you know the actual horsepower number this engine produces? It's a 2020.
I think they're like low to mid 50s.
So that one actually moves and flexes.
Yeah, this one
tension on the chain.
Yeah, but I'm not putting the bolt in yet because this also is it keeps the chain on the gear, which would help in the scenario of like you were doing a top end of this thing without pulling that apart. Mm-hmm. It would keep the chain from coming off that crank gear. It's dark colored grease. It's a special, I believe there's graphite in it. And so it's designed to go on the threads and the washers for the torque. So they want everything coated. And it's interesting because they want you to do all this and they want the bolts torqued to, it's a small foot-pound rating. And then they want you to take each bolt out and put more of this on and then put it back in and then start your torque procedure.
Twice?
Yeah. It's very interesting. No other
coating the hole?
It's coating the threads down inside the case.
The only reason I could see taking it back out was so you could assure that it was properly coated, maybe.
Yeah.
What do I know, though?
I
operate the camera, you operate the tools.
Well, an engineer figured that this has to happen, I guess. I mean, it's interesting because I've never really... I mean, you see this in the automotive world a bit.
But not in off-road?
Not generally, no. The service manual doesn't say anything about replacing these bolts, but I recommend that. It depends on if you're really trying to push horsepower I think it's a must that you change these every time, or every other. This torque to yield, you're stretching that bolt and you're not going to get consistent pressure.
What would you know about pressure?
One of the greatest movies ever. Let's see. So this says apply the grease, that moly grease, to the threads, contact surfaces, install the washers and bolts, install the bolts in the tightening sequence shown until the bolt and washer are lightly seated against the cylinder head. Tighten the bolts to specified torque in 2 or 3 steps. Tightening the sequence is shown. So it's essentially a crisscross pattern, and they want 30 foot-pounds, but they want you to do it in a couple of steps. So I'm going to grab, they say 2 or 3.
And it's 30 pounds both times?
No. So they want 30 total, so we're gonna go with 15 and then 30.
Okay. And
then we have to take each bolt out one at a time and continue the sequence. So I'm just going to grab correct socket here. I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning to go to 30 foot-pounds and then to take it back out, but it's I know why they want to do it in multiple steps, though, is because they want to make sure that the cylinder head is getting torqued evenly and flat.
Sure.
Okay. We set this up to 15 foot-pounds.
That stuff does get everywhere, though.
Yeah, it's not bad for anything. It's actually a really good assembly lube, but it has its purpose.
Crisscross at 15.
Yeah. Okay, and then we're going to go to 30.
All right, so after you do the 30 foot-pounds, you've got to remove them in the opposite.
Yes. So now
opposite sequence you just did.
So now they want one bolt at a time. So I have to start off with bolt number 1, which is going to be this one here. So it says loosen the bolt without loosening any other, like just one at a time. And
so the other 3 remain torqued.
Yeah, you want to take it completely out because it needs to be re-greased again.
There she is, and now you're just going to lube it up with the same stuff.
Yeah, which you would think that it's sufficient, but there must be a reason behind it.
Yamaha engineer just laughing. I'm going to get these idiots to do it twice. What's the book say? Go back to 15 first and then go to 30?
No, they say 17 and then 90 degrees. Yeah, fortunately this torque wrench has torque angle, so you can set that.
Oh, there you go.
But it's just tricky going back and forth on torques. Yeah, so now, yep, 90 degrees. Yeah, so this is nice because you don't have to like do a perfect 90.
Right.
You can, you know, it keeps track of it.
You're not guessing with your clicker.
Okay. Now on to the next one, which number 2 is across into here. We've done all the steps. Now we're at the final step is they want an additional 60 degrees.
I just moved up to a higher angle so we could see the rotation of 60 degrees on his handle. It's going to be awesome. Awesome shot. Stand by, guys.
Yeah, awesome. torque wrench will show me too what the torque is at that 60 degrees, that final 60.
What's it saying?
44.
Did it also say 44?
Like that one there was 46.
Ballpark.
Yeah, so you're within 2 foot-pounds. Yeah, I have to educate myself on the reason to these torque to yield bolts. It was explained to me at one time, but
You're old and forgot.
yes, that's exactly it. Just grabbing the parts here. And the cam chain. All right, we're gonna fish cam chain down through the galley, put it around the crankshaft. This would be tricky. Okay, there we go. Finally. All right, we need to make sure the piston's at top dead center. Which, I'm gonna rotate this. I'm gonna remove the spark plug to aid in letting this thing spin. Long-winded sucker. All right, much nicer.
Easy to rotate.
Yeah. You don't want to fully assemble the whole stator side because it makes things easier, but then you have to come back and put certain things so that you can get your alignment marks. All right, we're gonna put this stator cover on just temporarily because I need to line up the flywheel with, that's not what I wanted. I want to line the flywheel up in the correct location so we can set cam timing. I'm just gonna put that there. Not worried about any gasket or anything. I got a 360 at here. Yeah, so it's kind of hard, but see if you could see that A inside of there.
We see the A.
All right, so the A is just about lined up with this notch. Exhaust cam is the one with the decompressor. The cams, the lobes, because this engine is backwards, essentially, where the intake's in the front instead of in the back. These cam lobes actually go, they start up, normally they're opposing, they're together on these.
Yeah, you briefly touched on that for part 1. Gave us a quick explanation on how they work.
Yeah, there's dots on the camshaft gears, and I'm going to show here in a second.
Yeah, it's tough to see what you're doing exactly because your hands are in the way.
Yeah. Lobes are facing up and in, and then the dot here and here are parallel
with the top of the cylinder head.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put some assembly lube on everything, and then there's these half moon clips. They're like they're more of an indexing ring.
Yeah, you showed us during part 1 teardown.
So we're going to put
And they gotta
those in.
slide in that channel.
Yes.
Let me see if I can zoom in on that part. Nice. They sit right in that channel, and then the cover has a channel underneath it. If you hold that up for us.
Yes.
Just to show it has to ride in that. Yep.
And this is, you know, you got to be very gentle with making sure that you're lined up. And that those clips stay in there. I've heard of situations where they've popped out. Yeah, and you definitely want to make sure that you're able to seat them. Okay. These are going to be torqued to 7.5 foot-pounds. There's also a sequence that these have to be torqued to. Not necessarily multiple stages, but sequence as far as direction of tightening of these bolts. And generally it's from the in and work out. So we're going to be starting off with this single one here in the middle, and then working our way crisscrossing out.
Seven what? 7.3?
No, 7.5.
7.5.
I'm just going to run back through, make sure we're good. All right, now that we've done that, we're going to load the cam chain and put the tensioner bolt. So when we took it out, I went clockwise till it stopped and gave it just a little bit more, and it held there. And then now I just popped it and it fed itself in automatically to give the correct tension. Apply a little bit more assembly lube. Before we put the cam cover on, we're going to go back to the stator and we're going to torque the flywheel, and we're going to rotate the engine a few times around and then bring the marks back up to where they're supposed to be.
Make sure everything's the same.
Yeah, make sure nothing's goofy. We're going to be torquing the flywheel down 55 foot-pounds. So I gotta lock the gear.
Before you take that gear lock out, can you spin around here and show the viewer what you did there? So he just has this little part. It looks like a gear. It's just a key to pull out so that now it can spin freely again.
That way you don't damage the gears when you're torquing it.
We showed that in part 2, but I just wanted to explain what he was doing there here
Sure.
in this part. So now that's all set. You can put the cover back on. Is there something else you have to do?
I want to rotate the engine. Yeah, I will need to put the cover on there because that's where our marks are.
You're verifying now that everything is top dead center and lined up where it should be.
Yeah.
So he's just rotating it a couple times, then he'll put the cover on.
I should
to verify
actually.
that A with the notch again.
Yeah, I should have went counterclockwise. That's the correct direction on this engine. I'm going to get the mark close. I have a rough idea of where we're supposed to be.
Based off the dots.
Yeah. I'm going to get the gasket and we'll put this on. All right. We do want to put a little bit of that 3-bond in this area.
Only around that connection for the electrical.
Yeah. Put a couple screws. All right. Yeah, that's
spot on.
Yeah. All right, so
Valve covers.
let's just do this, even though we're going to be putting it. We're going to be putting it on, but it's just something to
verify we torqued them.
Yeah.
And we touched on it in the first 2 videos. We haven't mentioned it in this one. This engine will be rebuilt completely, entirely during the off season. New pistons, rings, and most likely a valve adjustment and all that. Mario is just replacing
what was needed.
Right, shift forks that got bent and a couple gears that got worn out. So this was a quick repair so Devin can get back on the racetrack.
Just wanted to make sure where these straps went.
They're just to hold cables.
Yeah, cable holder. And then right there with that copper washer, we replaced the copper washer and the where that triangle is, that triangle mark indicates where that copper washer should be. A lot of manufacturers do that. They will put a triangle mark where a copper sealing washer needs to be located. I'm going to torque these also to 7.5 foot-pounds.
It's still an intimidating job if you don't know what you're doing. But having stood here watching you do it, there aren't that many moving pieces to it. It's a fairly simple process when you do break it down what's inside this motor.
Yeah, if you get a sequence of how it comes apart and you have a plan on how it goes back together, like I was showing about different bins and such, it does.
It is achievable to do it by yourself.
It is achievable.
And hopefully these videos help other viewers doing their own projects, their own rebuilds with any type of information. That's why I'm asking you to repeat the torque specs and anything else relevant to how they got to get this thing running again.
Well, sure. The other piece of it is that, okay, if you're not capable or confident in doing it, there's nothing wrong with that. But now when you bring it to someone to have it done, you will understand what it takes, what actually goes into it,
and why their price may reflect that.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's stuff that's automatic that you want to replace. But there's a lot of things. I've told this to a lot of people. It's very difficult. If I tried to speculate what would break here, it would exceed what the thing is worth. It's like, how do you do it? So there's just stuff that's automatic that you need to change.
Wear and tear parts.
Right. And when you start getting up into the hours, and that's another key thing to touch on, is I recommend that everybody run an hour meter. If you buy something from somebody and you don't know and it doesn't have one, so what? Put one on it and track from there.
Yeah. And if you're going to be an enthusiast, a true motorsport enthusiast, or a racer like Devin Jensen is with the owner of this engine, it's important to learn how to do your own maintenance. One thing I noticed, you do have a lot of specialty tools. We talked about your torque wrench here.
Yes.
But you have a lot of specialty tools to get this job done, where your average guy trying to do this in his own shop probably doesn't have half the stuff you have.
A lot of it is general-based sockets and stuff. You need that gear holder,
the lock,
yeah. A flywheel puller, a couple things like that. But really, there's not that much crazy special tools. on the disassemble and assembly.
Sure.
When you want to get into start checking clearances and measuring stuff, that's where, you know, that gets into a whole nother piece of it.
Probably the most valuable tool you have is your manual over there on the bench. I always started my engine rebuilds with the manual. I prefer the print one. I see you have the print one too.
Yeah.
Versus a PDF on a computer.
The computer stuff is tough.
Well, what are your hands covered in right now? Grease and oil, and then you have to go touch an expensive keyboard.
Yeah.
To advance a page or look up a section.
I mean, there's no way. I mean, even I've done these things a variety of engines over the years. I still try to have the service manuals. I mean, this is a 2020, and I have a 2020 manual, but if I had like a 19 manual or a 21 manual, I mean, it's probably the same or extremely close. But you have to have something, at least to review and read before you even start, to see if you even think you can do it.
You're saying you can't learn everything on YouTube?
It helps. It definitely, I'm a visual person too, so having somebody, I can relate to sitting behind the screen and looking, and that's why we're doing this, because I've, you know, leaned on other people.
Yeah, Mario and I both watch other YouTube videos to learn.
We don't know it all. It fascinates me on some of the stuff that people come up with. All right, I'm going to put the collar or spacer for the front sprocket.
Looks like your parts are getting pretty thin on that table.
We're getting close. Now, one thing I didn't say before when we did the bottom end in part 2 was I did replace that seal. Actually, all the seals in the case. There's one there on the clutch arm.
Show us the clutch arm. Right
clutch
there.
arm, and then the counter shaft, and then the shift shaft. This is the spacer for the front sprocket. There's little cutouts or notches. Those notches go in. The taper is out. Front drive sprocket is 66. You know, a lot of times we're doing this in the chassis, so you have the drive chain
to lock up the sprocket for you. Instead of a big pair of channel locks.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a better way, but nothing's getting moved, so. And that front sprocket's not aluminum, it's steel, it's pretty rugged.
All right, sprocket's on, stator cover's on.
We're gonna bend the tab.
Moving on to valve cover next.
Yes. Okay. This seal is what, when the cover's on, goes around for the crankshaft, and that's what pressurized oil goes down through the crank. I'm changing that out so we don't have any issues.
He's putting his own clutch on, right?
No, I will probably put the clutch in when he comes to get the engine.
Okay.
Get that water pump shaft somewhat lined up in there so it'll go. Let's see if it'll actually go on there. Yeah. So just throw one screw in it. We're waiting for parts. Just got a couple little miscellaneous things to address. and we'll be in pretty good shape.
Nice.
Okay, so that won't fall out. This is the case saver. Put that on loosely. This goes for his exhaust. Okay, we got that. Need to put the spark plug in.
It's gotta suck to be doing that in the chassis.
Yeah,
Probably can't be easy to reach.
no, it's tricky. We're getting down to the end here. One thing I want to do, put power to the starter. I don't know if I can get the chump pack in there though. Do a little arky sparky. All right, we should be good.
Contact.
Good.
I heard some sucking and blowing.
Yeah, I like to do that just to verify that, especially the starter one-way clutch. There's nothing goofy there. All right, pop that back off, and we
Call it a
are
build.
Yeah, we are pretty much wrapped up.
Great job. Any tips for the guys looking to do this themselves?
Not that comes to mind, but if you have any questions, reach out.
We're happy to answer.
Yeah, try to give as much information as we can, and
I think the key to these builds is just take your time, read the manual, follow everything to procedure. You got it.
cleanliness.
People can do this, sure. A couple specialty tools, and you can handle this on your kitchen table. Why not?
Yeah, I just like to,
Port it up.
yeah, just so
Keep the bugs out.
that's it.
Awesome. Well, this concludes the Yamaha YZ450F engine rebuild. Part 1, you saw us take it down all the way to the bottom, identify the issue, which was bent forks,
Yep, and 4 transmission gears.
4 transmission gears that had to be replaced. So all that was required just to get to those problem areas and then restart from there, which was bare cases pretty much.
Yes.
Yep, bare cases. You saw him put in the crank first, followed by the gear sets, both gear sets, and then worked his way upward from there. Nice job, bud.
Well, I really appreciate everybody checking each part out, and we'll be coming up with all kinds of stuff to do. Please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. We want to grow, want to do more projects, get into all kinds of different things, and you know, related to this stuff, but just new projects. So thanks for tuning in.
Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye.
That's it.